Greetings, lovers of lore. Thank you for joining me for another installment of Streets of Capenna lore. There has been such a great response to the previous Capenna lore that now we're going to dive into the side stories. And today we're going to be taking a look at the story of Perrie, a significant member of the Broker's crime family. Now, Perrie is a gigantic rhinoceros man. He is an enforcer. He is both smart and strong, but is usually just written off as being big dumb muscle by anyone who doesn't know him. He wears an armored pinstripe suit and wields a massive hammer capable of smashing entire walls to dust. So, when the story commences, he is down in the Mezio. He is searching through the lounges because he is working for the Brokers right now, looking for a particular street brawler by the name of Krent. He has just entered into one of these lounges of the Mezio and got the same kind of standard response whenever he enters into one of these lounges. People know a broker enforcer when they see it, so anybody who is actually kind of on the wrong side of the Brokers jets out of the area when they show up. And this happens yet again to Perrie when he arrives at this lounge. He's looking for Krent, but somebody by the name of Junash, a seedy looking little Avon, as soon as Perrie walked in, somebody whispered, "Junash, the Brokers are here. You gotta get out of here." So the Avon just goes running off. But that's not even while Perrie is there. He just clocks it happening off on the side because part of his job is to pay attention. And he's noticing right now by paying attention that the Leonin security in the lounge he's in are giving him the eye. And he looks over at them and gives them a professional nod. But at that point, they bare their teeth at him. He's like, "Hey, I'm not looking for any trouble," but he realizes that as much as this area is neutral, it's also owned by the Cabaretti. So these Leonin security get uppity and they start coming at Perrie, right? They're basically weaving their way across the dance floor, and as they do so, the people on the dance floor start to get the sign that something is about to go down, and they clear off the floor as one of the Leonins literally pulls out a magical violin and starts magic flowing through it. Now, Perrie puts his hands up. "Hey, fellas, I'm just here looking for somebody. I'm not looking for trouble." And the bouncers say, "We know who you are. You aren't supposed to be here. Get out of our club." Perrie's like, "Yo, this is neutral ground. Why are you treating me like this?" But ultimately, the Leonin aren't backing down. Now, at this point, Perrie actually sees who he's looking for, Krent, and Krent ends up going out the back door, and Perrie goes to follow, but these bouncers won't get out of his way. And Perrie has a real problem here because of his reputation, right? If he doesn't do something about these bouncers stepping to him, the word will get out. And as a broker enforcer, his reputation is incredibly important. So Perrie is getting ready to do something when an old elf in a suit comes bustling up, basically calling off the bouncers, saying, "Look, I hired you guys in case I need your services. However, I don't feel like finding out tonight if you're strong enough to take down a broker's enforcer. So why don't you just leave him alone," right? And Perrie at this point is like, giving a nod of thanks to the elf dude who helped him out. But at the same time, these cats keep mouthing off, right? They call him a contract breaker. "You're a contract breaker. You've gone soft, Perrie. The Brokers are going to take you out." And I mean, in a way, they're not wrong. Perrie is reflecting on how precarious his position with the Brokers is, right? As a member of the Brokers, you have to uphold those contracts. And Perrie has indeed broken a contract with his own organization. And that puts him in a very dangerous spot, right? So the cats are basically sneering at him, making fun of it, and that's when he drags him out into the back alley and just whips the snot out of both of them. His reputation demands it. So he leaves them there smashed up and leaving like unconscious because the Brokers can't be floated in this way, right? And as a result, he's a little bit bruised and beat up. One of the Leonin managed to cut up his skin a bit, but overall, things went well for him and his reputation is secure. At this point, another person who works with the Brokers shows up. This is Rigo, who is a Leonin who's there to provide the next step of orders to Perrie, basically saying that Krent has been reassigned to one of the new kids in the brokers. Now, Perrie is floored by this. He has literally never been taken off a job before, right? So this sends a cold chill down his spine. This is a really bad situation. So he checks his amplifier, which is a device that sits in his ear and basically will relate commands from the broker's power structure to him. It kind of got messed up a little in the battle, so he has to recalibrate it. And once he does, he can hear a message being played saying, "Stand down, Perrie. Wait for Rigo to appear with new orders." And Perrie obviously is very troubled. He turns to Rigo and says, "Look, this isn't how it's done." And Rigo just goes, "Look, you can't even, man. You didn't care about the rules when it came to that kid. So you can't even try and pretend about the rules now, right?" And that's when Perrie considers just bolting, making a break for it, right? Because Falco, the leader of the brokers, is a terrifying individual, and now he's about to go report to him. So Rigo pulls out a little jar of halo while Perrie's thinking about it. Perrie ultimately decides not to run off, and they use that halo to directly teleport to the head office of the brokers, right? And Perrie goes to meet with Falco. So Falco, as soon as he comes in, goes, "I have a job for you, Perrie." Now, Perrie can't help himself, right? Because Perrie underneath is a good dude. He says, "What about that boy?" And Falco slams his hand down on the table. "You failed me before. I'm giving you another chance. And you want to talk about your failures here? We're not doing this." Do you know what I mean? Order has to be maintained. You can't have contract breakers. You can't do that, right? It's that kind of a scenario. So basically, he's like, "I'm going to give you another chance here. You need to step up." And he's terrified, what I'm saying here is Perrie's terrified that Falco's going to toss him off the balcony. Because if you didn't know, Falco has tossed many contract breakers straight off of the balcony out of his rage, right? But here Perrie is still maintaining that he's just a kid. It's like, no, order has to be maintained. The kid didn't know, though. He had no idea, right? Doesn't matter, says Falco. This kid was set up right out front of a major Obscura operation, and he signed a contract to let us know what was going on with them, right? Like, that is the deal. Right? That's it. And it's just like, well, what's going to happen to the kid? Not our problem. We have to get what we need out of this, and the contracts need to be maintained, right? So Falco's going on about prophecy, because that's the main thing. There's a doomsday prophecy that the brokers have. Falco's the leader of the brokers, so his job is to make sure that they are getting as many contracts as they can, so they're prepared for when doomsday arrives. And Falco brings this up. What about the prophecy, Perrie? What about our contracts? Are you literally abandoning the most important duty in all of New Capenna? To which Perrie says, no, I want to help the people. I want to save the people. But at the same time, we can't be doing these to children, right? It's not like, I understand the necessity of what we're doing, but you can't do this to kids. And Falco says, I'm withholding judgment on the child for now. The mission I'm giving you is, we have a Halo stash. We've been saving up Halo, and the location has been found, essentially. A riveteer knows about it, but has been placed under a gag order, right? Which is broker's magic that makes it so they can't talk about it. But this riveteer also has paper plans. So Perrie is going to be sent out, but not alone this time. Perrie is actually pretty slick and observant. He's a smart guy. So he notices that in the shadows in the corner of the room, there's actually somebody standing there. It turns out to be Cross. Now, Cross is somebody who really likes to dress immaculately. He's a fastidious kind of fellow, and he does like a level of showmanship. So he's hiding in the shadows, waiting to reveal himself. But basically, Perrie sees him there. It's like, all right, come on, let's go, Cross. And then Cross just comes out looking rather cross, in fact, because he's disappointed that he doesn't get to do his surprise maneuver, right? But ultimately, Cross is there to be Perrie's supervisor. Perrie doesn't like working with partners. He especially doesn't want somebody to have oversight of him right now when he's in bad graces with the brokers, but he has no choice in what to do. So Cross and Perrie head off in Cross's sweet ride, and Cross ends up handing Perrie a vial of Halo. Perrie's like, I'm all right. Cross is like, no, we're going into somewhere dangerous. I need you in tip-top shape. So Perrie chugs down the Halo. His bones weren't broken, sorry. his skin reknits, the bruises heal, all that sort of thing, while Cross continues to explain that they're going after somebody known as Jolene the Plunder Queen. She is a demolitionist capable of knocking down entire buildings. And Perrie is familiar with this type of individual. In his particular part of the profession, they actually call them bulldozers because of how destructive they are. So, Cross and Perrie head down into the bowels of New Capenna. That's where the Riveteers survive and thrive, right? And Perrie likes it down here because he respects the actual workers. These aren't individuals in super expensive suits doing backroom deals. These are genuine people working nuts and bolts, putting things together, like the salt of the earth style individuals. And this speaks to Perrie because he literally comes from this part of Capenna. He was actually a boxer down in the Riveteer rings for a while. So this is kind of his home, right? But he brings up a good point because he's from there. He's like, hey, we look too rich. Like, we're in a really nice car and nicely dressed. Aren't we kind of taking a risk here? And Cross just cuts him off. He's like, look, we don't have Halo to waste on teleporting. So let's just get what we need to get done. And they make their way without any problems. They get down into a rotting building near the depths of New Capenna, right? And this building has stained glass windows of angels or whatever. It's a nice building, but run down. Inside it, there is a manhole. And Cross pries up the manhole cover. And at this point, that's when Perrie goes, wait a minute. Are we going outside? Is this a prank or something? If you didn't know, Perrie is actually from outside. Not him specifically, but 2 generations before, some of his family managed to get inside of New Capenna from the outer world before it was sealed off again. So, you know, he's basically not wanting to go back out into the outside world. But Cross says, this is Falco's top priority, finding Jolene. To which Perrie says, I never heard that. And then Cross says that's because he's only telling the people that he trusts. Pretty rough thing to say, but also the situation at hand, right? So, basically, Perrie goes, all right, I have no choice but to go along with this because otherwise, can't get back in Falco's good graces. So, that's the only way I'm going to survive. Down we go. So they head down into what actually happens to be an old castle. New Capenna is actually built on the remnants of a previous civilization below it, right? So once they get down into the old castle, Perrie pulls out a tracking monocle. How it works with broker magic is, as soon as Jolene broke the contract with them, a flare of magic fires off into the air and creates a trail that follows the contract breaker, and using specific magic devices like the monocle, you can figure out where they've gone. So there is a trail of a contract breaker, and it looks fresh, so it does appear they are in the right place, and they are on Jolene's trail. Unfortunately, a bunch of feral raccoon folk show up, and at first Perrie's just trying to say, hey, we don't want any problems. We're just looking for this lady. Have you seen her? Showing a picture of her. But the raccoon folk are starving and, as I mentioned, feral. So they just go at these two, right? Cross and Perrie at the same time. Perrie kisses his magic rings and brass knuckles form across one of his hands, and the other hand turns into a big magically covered gauntlet, right? So Perrie's watching these raccoon folk leaping all over the place, and he's trying to figure out who's the leader. That's how you stop these guys, right? Because they're feral and hungry, so it's going to be really difficult otherwise. You got to find their alpha and take them out. So Perrie watches the ebb and flow of combat and figures out who the leader is, and the leader of the raccoons is smart enough that he sees that Perrie has sussed him out, and he basically decides to flee. And at that point, that ends the threat of the raccoon folk. But it turns out that the raccoon folk were actually just part of the problem, right? Because Perrie says, like, basically Cross says, all right, let's get out of here. Perrie gives him a look like, yo, you're not in charge of me. And Cross goes, okay, you know, when you're ready. So Perrie gestures forwards. Cross takes one step, but before he can move any further, an entire wall just collapses down upon him. And Perrie is freaking out, right? Because if he returns without Cross, Falco is going to be enraged. This will not help him. And unfortunately for Perrie, he's too focused on that to realize that right beneath his feet, the ground is cracking. So he looks down and realizes that demolition magic is being infused into the ground. But fortunately for him, not only is he big and smart, he's also really fast. So he manages to run out of the trap mostly while still being slammed by rocks and a little bit of dust or whatever. But the dust gets kicked up, somebody nearby gets some dust in the throat and emits a little cough. Perrie hears it and smashes directly through the wall there behind with his hammer, pulverizing it. Behind that wall is the riveteer they're looking for, Jolene, and she has on giant magic gauntlets, right? So she takes a swing. Her first punch goes at Perrie, and he does that grab the fist maneuver, right? But the force of her punch is so strong that it shatters every bone in his hand, right? He brings his hammer swinging up to try and clock her with it, but she manages to get that out of the way. Boom, gets it out of the way, and then Perrie headbutts her. She takes a step back, and Perrie's like, whoa, take a look at everything around us. If you and I continue to go at it, this whole place is going to collapse on us. I'm tough enough to walk away from this. Are you? And it seems like that's not enough to stop her because she's about to leap forward at him, but then her eyes glaze over. There's a flicker of magic, and behind Perrie, he can hear a soft kind of scraping. Turns out it's Cos. He managed to get himself out from under the wall, and he is pretty worse for the wear, but he has enough power that he's able to basically put Jolene under his magical control, right? Now, Cross has the ability to literally kind of read into people's minds. So he explains to Perrie, we've got a problem. Obscura basically took control of Jolene here. So he gets rid of the magic. Jolene ends up blinking and does the, oh, hey, what's going on kind of thing, right? So then Cross turns around and is like, we're going to do a magical deposition, which is essentially where you just interrogate somebody's mind with magic, right? So after digging through her mind, they learn that she was abducted, she was forced by the Obscura, and basically this is a trap to start a war between the brokers and the riveteers. The idea was supposed to be they would catch Jolene, they would rough her up real bad, and then they would dump her in front of the riveteers' headquarters so they would get the message from the brokers. But then because they had been hosed, then it would just lead to this massive kind of crime battle, right? That would be the idea. And that was the Obscura's way of stopping whatever the brokers were doing with all this halo that they're gathering up. So at this point, Perrie's like, oh, you have to go back and tell Falco. And Cross goes, you can't go back to Falco without the results. Here's what he ordered you to do. And if you do, you're basically taking your life in your own hands, right? And Perrie's just, he can't deal with it. He's like, look, how many people will die if I don't say something? And Cross again, dude, you're putting your life on the line. And Perrie just says, but how many other lives will I save? And he even for a moment had the fleeting thought that if he allowed this street war to happen, that he has enough tactical skills that maybe Falco would actually take him on as his right-hand tactician, right? But Perrie ultimately has such a good moral compass that he throws away his ambition to go back under threat of losing his own life to try and save people from Capenna that he doesn't even know. So Perrie heads back, and of course, Falco is livid. What are you doing here? I see no plans. I see no riveteer. I don't even see Cross. What are you doing? So Perrie explains Cross is coming back with Jolene. So Falco's still angry. So I take it that means no plans? Perrie continues. It was a trap. Falco goes, let me guess, the Obscura. And Perrie's like, wait a minute. How did you know that? So Falco says, come out onto the balcony with me. And this is where Perrie's getting really, really nervous, right? Obviously, he's made a lot of missteps, and Falco is known for sending people flying. So, as they're out on the balcony, Falco casually says, do you know, some people out here can be really, really careless. You'd be surprised at the number of people who slip and accidentally fall off of the balcony. And then Perrie gets a look on his face, but Falco smiles. He says, relax. Relax, Perrie. Relax. It's going to be just fine. War is coming. I need you, but we have a problem. The kid. The child, Perrie. No one can break a contract, you see. So, I need you to step up and take a place of leadership or sort of scenario, right? And at this point, Perrie is faced again with a real test. He can either give up the boy and just say, you know what, you're right, contracts do have to be honored. And at this point, what's happening is Falco is offering him a position of leadership, saying, take care of the boy and I will promote you, right? So this is Perrie's truest test. But he says, I can't do it. And basically Falco goes, oh, I get it. It's like words on paper don't matter, right? They don't come into effect here. And it's like, no, words on paper do matter, but they don't make it right. This is just a terrified kid, Falco, right? And Falco's, if that child hadn't betrayed us, we would be winning right now. And Perrie comes right back. It's not winning if we have to kill children. And that's amazing, right? Like, perfect. So Falco retorts, I have brawlers and tacticians, both that are better than you. And Perrie's just frustrated at this point. Then use them. And Falco laughs it off. He's like, I need you to deal with the boy. Our reputation is at stake here, right? So what happens is Perrie does take care of the boy. He takes the boy, puts him in a car, drives him off to a place where they usher him in. Turns out where Perrie is actually taking him is an elite boarding school. They've made a contract with the elite boarding school to take care of the child. They're going to completely erase all of his memories, essentially make him disappear. Because ultimately, what Falco was grooming Perrie for, and what he tells him is, I don't need you as a brawler. I don't need you as a tactician. I need you to be my conscience. This is incredible. Falco is tasked with stopping the doomsday that's going to hit Halo. They have New Capenna. He has the doomsday prophecy. His job is to make sure that New Capenna survives. But he recognizes that his drive to make sure that New Capenna survives is so strong that he might turn into a monster. So what he needs is somebody who, even at the risk of his own life, even when being offered power, promotions, everything else, will do what is actually right. Because somebody who is that morally upstanding, who will stand up even to the big boss, is exactly who you need to guide you in these moral aspects. I love it. The entire story is about Perrie being groomed to be the conscience of the leader of the brokers so they can stop the doomsday. It's so good. Anyhow, that wraps up the story. Big thank you to all of my patrons. Let me know if you guys like me doing the side story stuff, because if you do, then we'll keep going. There's 4 more we can cover, and there's a lot of details that weren't added in to the As It Unfolds story, right? So thanks for being here, my friends. Go watch some more lore. Remember, lore is life.